Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 Apostrophe, with another episode in my long-running A Closer Look into the World of the X-Files, Season 3, Episode 23. This is it, man. We're up against the season finale. Very much looking forward to that. And that opens up the gateway to Season 4. Wow, to think that I have literally almost 3 complete seasons under my belt in terms of looking at these. It feels good. It'll feel better when we're talking about the season finale of Season 5, which is that might be my favorite season finale. And of course that segues into X-Files Fight the Future, which does come up because this story, Wetwired, is written by none other than the visual effects artist, long-running visual effects artist. I think Matt Beck he worked on 113 episodes. But this guy's career is rich in visual effects. And that is Matt Beck. Star Trek The Motion Picture, 79. His career really gets rolling. Firefox, 82. Of course, played side by side with John Carpenter's The Thing, if you remember way back then, in 82. But he got to work with Tobe Hooper on Life Force as well. That's pretty awesome. And what a visual effects-driven feast that is. The Abyss, that's pretty awesome. Exorcist 3, of course, both X-File films. And my favorite Spider-Man film of all time, the original Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock, of course. And wow, this guy, man, that's not the only thing he did, man. That's just kind of like the tip of the iceberg. And this is the only thing, I'm pretty sure, the only thing he ever writes. And wow, to have only written one episode for a long-running TV series like the X-Files, and to, as far as I'm concerned, hit it right out of the freaking park, is what he does with this one. Inspired mostly with, it's funny, inspired a lot by ongoing conversations he was seeing on TV about TV violence, violence in film and TV, and the effect it has on its viewers. And we can get into a really long discussion on that. And that is played out in the conversation that Scully and Mulder will have not once, but I think twice in this episode. Could even be 3. It is sort of sprinkled in there. And of course, Mulder takes the hard line of, that's ridiculous. Healthy people who watch TV or film, say horror movies or whatnot, are not driven to violence out of left field. It's just no. You already have to have something really wrong with you to gain inspiration from something not even real and then try to act it out in reality. You've already got something really wrong going on. Well, Scully, of course, comes out of the sort of research aspect of this, and to the story that we'll get into, applies it in terms of possible what lies behind the motives of those committing these seemingly random acts of violence. Now, in this episode of Wetwired, which I almost wish they could have made this the season finale and just had a sort of a season ending, season beginning, to be continued, but a sort of back-to-back, or, back-to-back, whatever, that's outside of the mythos. I think that would have been a lot of fun. And, you could have just had fun with this, and you could have taken, end this, either write this out more fully and bring in more intrigue, and then cut it into, and season ends, season begins, and then you pop back into your, maybe even let it move into the mythos in a unique way. And I think a lot more could have been written as far as drawing inspiration from some of the things I'll talk about, I'll show, in fact, but anyways, I almost kind of wish that's how it would have went, because that's how much I love this episode. If I had to give you a top, I dare say even top 5. I was going to say top 10, even top 5. I almost dare say Wetwired may be in there, or at least outside looking in. It's right there, maybe. Definitely in top 10, easily. Wetwired is. And so props to Matt Beck, man, for knocking this out, and Rob Bowman for bringing his written vision to the screen in a pretty good way, man. There's some great moments in here. So let's just get into this real quick, I guess, then. Wetwired. Let's use this as a segue. So really what you have here is an extension, I guess, of an earlier episode that dealt with a very similar issue, and that is government, MK Ultra kind of stuff, government psyops on citizens, whether it's LSD in the water or pumping in foreign or alien signals, I guess, into their viewing habits that will cause people to do things that normally they would not, out of character, right? And so it draws inspiration, I think, first from what I already said, but second, I think, in earlier episodes, and MK Ultra for sure, but also too, and I wish there would have been an Easter egg of sorts. I don't know how you would have did this, but George A. Romero in 1973, I think probably horrified people with the idea of what could happen in terms of the government taking over a town that is, well, if you've never seen The Crazies, I mean Romero's original classic, and you love Wetwired, you really ought to. Just give you a little, I'm not going to read the whole synopsis, just give you a little bit. When a plane carrying a secret biological weapon crash lands in the vicinity of a small rural town, the area descends into chaos, infected with a virus that sends them into a homicidal frenzy. The locals turn on each other in an orgy of bloody violence. And, that's where the government sort of suddenly descends and sort of locks the place down. And it is, I don't know what's scary. And I think Romero was trying to say, what's scarier? The actual manipulating or test or control of the military to basically size up the situation and then determine in just a really cold, calculated way, determine the solution to the issue, to containment, right? Contain the issue. Another interesting film that deals with it from a really different, out of left field, is Joe Dante's Piranha. Now you say, how? Well, if you remember the original Piranha, the Piranha are the byproduct of military engineering on Piranha, that, so they could basically dump them into the rivers, streams of North Vietnam and just create havoc. Now that thought in of itself is a pretty terrifying thought if you just imagine that played out in reality. And so what happens in Piranha, of course, is these Piranha who just basically are laying sort of quietly in a sort of makeshift reservoir sorts of pool way up in the hills beyond anyone, is with some purpose but naiveness dumped into the water supply as a result of a missing person and people wanting to get to the bottom of where these missing people are, and so they just unleash a horror that kind of reminds you of 28 Days Later, right? The monkeys, right? But anyways, it makes Piranha, when you kind of take in consideration the film from that point of view of what these piranhas are designed to do, it's interesting. It is interesting. Speaking of George A. Romero, I gotta just say this. I just got this the other day. I just got this, the amusement park Shudder release. This is the film that was long lost for so many decades. If you don't know anything about it, you happen to have Shudder, or there's a way of renting it, you ought to take a look at a short film made for the Lutheran Society way back when, lost for decades, finally seeing the light of day, and just an incredible piece of work by George A. Romero. So anyways, Wetwired. So what you have here is we open up with our pre-credit sequence deals with a guy who is, well, he's shallow grave is burying somebody that he's just killed. And then he's home washing his hands in his sink, the blood and mud and dirt and everything else off. And he suddenly turns and sees, in effect, the person he just killed and laid in a shallow grave is standing there. And so, of course, totally freaked out. He grabs a shovel and, well, second later, you're outside. He's dumped the body of this guy into his trunk. Police show up, and of course, when he sees the police, what he sees is the same guy he has just killed multiple times. So he rushes at the police, and they put him down, tase him or whatever. And then they look in his trunk, and they realize, and as a viewer for the first time, we realize who he really has killed is his wife, Sarah. I believe her name is Sarah in the show. And of course, he now being tased has been sort of stunned, pun intended, stunned out of this sort of psychedelic, sort of whatever you want to call it, trance. Realizes, in fact, that he has just killed his wife. And of course, and that really does, of course, take you back to something very familiar with the opening burning down of the house sequence in The Crazies. I kind of think there's some real inspiration there, and perhaps maybe more with the previous X-Files episode that dealt with a similar thing. So into credit sequence, the credits roll, and of course Mulder and Scully get the case, and I think the first thing we see is them catching up with the guy who is now locked up in an insane asylum or a psychiatric ward. And so begins the investigation. And we find, as he's explaining to Scully, what this guy in fact did, aside from kill his own wife, but I think 4 other people who he believed was a Serbian general guilty of genocide. And because his parents were Holocaust survivors, it triggered in him an innate, deep-seated fear and created a delusion, manipulating his mind and his fears to the extreme. And so when he sees this guy who've seen on the news and know what he's guilty of, and he starts to see him, that, lends it, that sort of, falls into a pattern of other cases of murder that we will see. One of them we don't see, and I kind of wish we would have, because had it been, and see, this is why the show could have actually been extended and used as a season finale. I think we learned that there was a girl in the same neighborhood. Now, it's all happening in this neighborhood, right? This girl is babysitting these kids, ends up attacking the kids because, as she tells authorities, she thought they were wolves. Apparently, her deep-seated fear was being attacked by wolves. What we do see is an average house mom wrapping up some dishes, and suddenly things just start to go, with her vision, and she hears something, and she goes to the window, looks out the window, and what she sees, seemingly what she sees, is her husband in a hammock with another girl. At least that's what we're told she saw. And off screen, but you're looking at the TV, off screen, suddenly, you see her grab a rifle, and then a moment later, as you're looking at the TV, you just hear the shots ring out. When you see the after effect, this is not even her husband. Her husband's a trucker. He's been gone for 10 days. And she sees the neighbor, who he's not even messing around, say, with his own wife. He's got his dog on him. Now, thankfully for the story's sake, she doesn't kill the dog. You can, and nothing's really talked about that. Like, you can just imagine, once you know what's happened, she comes out with the rifle and it's loaded, ready to go. And that dog probably just knowing, but you'd think a dog would have just sat there and protected its owner. But we'll find the dog is fine and everything. Guy's, of course, dead in his hammock. And so that sort of broadens, the sort of conspiracy. And now, I should have started this. It all begins with Mulder actually getting the tip by whom we call the plainclothes man, who is sort of our Mr. X, or our X, for the episode because Stephen Williams, who plays X, could not do this episode. At least he could not do the entire episode due to contracted obligations for another show. LA Heat, maybe something like that. And so he comes in at the end. So the plainclothes man he meets him, undisclosed place, basically gives him a newspaper with the article of what this guy that we talked about at the beginning has done. And so that leads him on the investigation, right? Well, this guy comes up again, right? As the plot thickens, right? Well, they go, when they're in the homes, searching the homes, Mulder and Scully, they find that what's another part of the pattern is these people are video recording, VCR tapes, just what seems to be random stuff, just crazy. And they've got whole shelves and stuff just filled with what just seems like, why tape that? Well, we find is because as Mulder sees from I think the house that originates the first event, he sees, and we see it actually first. If you go back, watch it multiple times, we see the cable repairman van, stereotypical van. We see this, but Mulder will see this guy climbing up telephone pole later on. He sees him again. This time, as he gets out there to try to question the guy is able to get away, pretending he's never even seen Mulder. When Mulder climbs up the pole, and lo and behold, he pulls. There's you got these I don't even know what you call them. Things that just kind of plug into the box that's way up on the pole, and they have to do with pumping in or blocking certain kind of channels or whatever, keep you from watching anything without having to pay for it, whatever. And he sees one that is sort of gold plated, and so he pulls that out, and enter lone gunman. He'll take it to them, and they will begin to ascertain what this thing is doing. Now, in the midst of all of this, Scully, who is, and both have been reviewing a lot of these videotapes, trying to figure out if there's any pattern here, what's causing these people to just randomly kill. Of course, Scully's on the side of maybe it's just watching too much violence on TV or something. And Mulder's like, nah, there's something way more sinister going on than that. We see very quickly it's beginning, the signal, whenever it's being pumped into these homes as a test of some government psyops or whatever, it begins to affect Scully. And so her deep-seated fear is, of course, that Mulder would betray her. And so this is what starts to play out in her sort of delusional way of seeing things. And that will get to the point where she nearly shoots him and another person, and ultimately that will be resolved as Mulder will find out she's been hiding out in her mom's house, and because of her mom's intervention, she will stand down, lay the gun down. It's a really, really emotional moment when Scully just sort of realizes that there may truly be something wrong with her, that how she's viewing the world is not reality. And so the idea that something else is in control of you, and it's not the only time in the X-Files, but it's that we see something like this, but this is done, it's one of those rare moments where it's done so well. And so you really feel for her as she just sort of collapses in her mother's arms, sobbing in tears, because she just knows there's something wrong here. In fact, when Mulder catches up with her in the hospital, he's like, how do you feel? And she's like, ashamed is the first word she says, because she's been duped. She's been manipulated by an outside force. And, Mulder and Scully are the type that are, they're so professional, you don't expect this kind of thing to happen, right? And so ultimately, I see where my time is. I'm just gonna, so this is kind of like all funneling down to a place where, just as Mulder is about to piece things together and perhaps find out what's really happening, what's happening behind the scenes, so to speak, X does reappear, and when he does, he takes out the two people that Mulder most desperately needs to get his hands on, and that an argument ensues between the two, and ultimately X, is able to leave the scene, reminding Mulder that You need me more than you think you need me. Now, the cigarette smoking man does play into this story a bit. And he will actually come up towards the end, very end. I think the last scene we see is X has a meeting with the cigarette smoking man, in which the cigarette smoking man is, basically, okay, is everything cleaned up? Yeah, this is cleaned up, that's cleaned up. What about Mulder's source? Got him. What about his source? And this is where you sort of, X is the man. But he's playing the cigarette smoking man, it would seem, but the cigarette smoke, you can just see a sort of a glint in his eyes, like maybe a thing of suspicion, like maybe he doesn't quite buy what he's selling. And so that is a very, very intriguing moment in the car at the very end that we're sort of left with. And then we're catapulted into the season finale, which I think, I'm just going to guess, is back into the mythos of what drives much of the series forward. And that it really is. I mean, I've left some things out, some really great things. Mulder, he's not affected by the videotapes because he's colorblind. And there's a great moment where when he acknowledges this to the lone gunman, that in fact he can't see red or green, I think. There is a pattern on one of the lone gunman's shirts that is heavy red. And the minute Mulder has said this, we see from Mulder's perspective, one of the lone gunmen has his shirt, and you no longer see the red. Now, I wish they would have carried that out the rest of the episode, but they don't. And I kind of wish they would have. That would have made it really interesting if you would have got to see the rest of this play out from Mulder's perspective, and taking those two colors completely out of the equation. That would have been interesting. So where Scully almost falls complete victim to this, the random acts of violence are pretty intense, man. Whether it's played off screen or we're basically seeing it, or there's that one story where we're sort of clued in on the girl and the babysitter, and it just, wow, this really could have been played out, I think, in a two-parter with a little bit more intrigue between X and cigarette smoking man, in a way that could have maybe, drew more from, say, the Crazies, and been a nice little nod to Romero. It could have been cool. It could have been a great two-parter. But it's not. But it's a great show. It is a great episode. And so here we are. We're at the next stop, season 3 finale. And then we rush right into season 4 and onward. So if you haven't seen it, or it's been quite a while since you've seen Wetwired, I highly suggest you definitely go back and revisit that episode. And if you ever get a chance and never seen Romero's original Crazies from '73, definitely check that out as well. A great companion piece. Watch this episode, or vice versa, whatever. Anyways, as always, thank you for your support. Thank you for just plugging in, and appreciate any comments or anything else. As always, we end these things off with Go Bills.
This is not a dream. Not a dream. We might be useful to you.